Hello boys and girls, it's Miss Ost here. Today we're going to be reading Amelia and Eleanor Go for a Ride. Now the very interesting thing about this book is that none of the pictures are in color, they're in black and white. I wonder why they're in black and white. Can you maybe make a guess or an inference? Let's read and see if we can find out. Amelia and Eleanor Go for a Ride. And this is by Pam Muñoz Ryan, and the pictures are by Brian Selznick. Ooh, you see the big plane? Amelia and Eleanor were birds of a feather. Eleanor was outspoken and determined, and so was Amelia. Amelia was daring and liked to try things that other women wouldn't even consider. Eleanor was the very same. So when Eleanor discovered that her friend Amelia was coming to town to give a speech, she naturally said, "Bring your husband and come to dinner at my house. You can even have a sleepover." You can see the beautiful rays of the sun peeking over those clouds. It wasn't unusual for two friends to get together, but Eleanor was Eleanor Roosevelt, the First Lady of the United States, who lived in the White House with her husband, President Franklin Roosevelt. And there's a portrait of Eleanor right there in black and white. Now let's read about Amelia. Amelia was Amelia Earhart, the celebrated aviator who had been the first female pilot to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. And when two of the most famous and adventurous women in the world got together, something exciting was bound to happen. And there's an awesome portrait of Amelia. I wonder why the illustrator chose to do the pictures like this, with the portrait of Eleanor and a portrait of Amelia. What do you think? Washington, D.C. Then we've got an awesome landscape picture, and there's the White House. In the guest room at the White House, Amelia and her husband, G.P., dressed for dinner. Amelia pulled on the long white evening gloves that were so different from the ones she wore while flying. Many people didn't understand why a woman would want to risk her life in a plane, but Amelia had said it more than once. It's all for the fun of it. Besides, she loved the feeling of independence she had when she was in the cockpit. She carefully folded a gift for Eleanor, a silk scarf that matched her own. The powder blue with streaks of indigo reminded Amelia of the morning sky. And there she is getting ready. And then there's her husband, JP. Oh look, Eleanor's putting on some gloves too. Very interesting how we're seeing the same things with both women in the illustrations. Meanwhile, Eleanor dressed for dinner too. Her brother Hall would be escorting her this evening because the president had a meeting to attend. But Eleanor was used to that. She pulled on the long white evening gloves that were so different from the ones that she wore while sometimes driving. Then she peeked out the window at the brand new car that had been delivered that afternoon. She couldn't wait to drive it. Many people thought it was too bold and dangerous to drive a car, especially the First Lady of the United States. But Eleanor always gave the same answer. It's practical, that's all. Besides, she loved the feeling of independence when she was behind the wheel. So I'm seeing some comparisons, some similarities between Amelia and Eleanor. And we can infer that this was a different time period because it says that women didn't drive a lot. Interesting. And we know women drive all the time now, so we can infer it's in the past. Very interesting. It was brisk and cloudless April evening. The guests had gathered in the Red Room, and the table looked elegant, as even the small dinner parties at the White House can be. Eleanor and Hall greeted Amelia and JP as well as several reporters and a photographer. Excuse me. Amelia gave Eleanor the scarf. "I love it," Eleanor exclaimed. "It is just like yours." And this picture's drawn from the outside, and we can see Amelia and Eleanor right there. Dinner started with George Washington's crab chowder. "This is delicious," said Amelia. "But the soup at the White House has such a fancy name. What will the dessert be called? Perhaps Abraham Lincoln's peach cobbler, or maybe Thomas Jefferson's custard." They laughed and everyone took turns guessing. By the time they got to the roast duck, the conversation had turned to flying. "Mrs. Roosevelt just received her student pilot's license," said one of the reporters. Amelia wasn't surprised. She had been the one to encourage Eleanor. She knew her friend could do anything she set her mind to. "I'll teach you myself," offered Amelia. "I accept. Tell us, Amelia, what's it like to fly at night in the dark?" And there they are having some of that roast duck and crab chowder. Talking about flying. Oh, this illustration is very unusual. What can we infer about what's going to happen on this page based on this picture? I wonder. Everyone at the table leaned closer to her. Very few people in the whole world had ever flown at night, and Amelia was one of them. That's so unusual because we fly at night all the time now. Must have been very different back then. Amelia's eyes sparkled. The stars glitter all around, and they seem close enough to touch. There's Amelia. So now I'm inferring that those stars that she's talking about, the illustrator put into the illustrations, so we can kind of see the stars that she was talking about too. At higher elevations, the clouds below shine white, with dark islands where the night sea shows through. I've seen the planet Venus setting on the horizon, and I've circled cities of twinkling lights. That sounds so beautiful. The capital city at night? Asked Eleanor. There's no describing it, said Amelia. You just have to experience it on a clear night when you can see forever. Why, we should go tonight. We could be a loop to Baltimore and be back in no time. Can you imagine if your friend was like, let's just hop on a plane tonight? I would be like, oh my goodness. The Secret Service man protested. This hasn't been approved. Nonsense, said Eleanor. If Amelia Earhart can fly solo over the Atlantic Ocean, I can certainly take a short flight to Baltimore and back. Before dessert could be served, Amelia had called Eastern Air Transport and arranged the flight. There's those beautiful stars again and the clouds. And then we see Amelia and Eleanor plotting their idea to go fly to Baltimore. Within the hour, Amelia and Eleanor boarded the Curtiss Condor twin-motor airplane. For a moment, both women looked up at the mysterious night sky. Then, without changing her gloves, Amelia slipped into the cockpit and took the wheel. So she's still wearing her fancy dinner gloves. That's so funny. The plane rolled down the runway faster and faster. Lights from the airstrip flashed in front of them. And then they lifted into the dark. And that is such a cool picture. You can see the plane. And then there's Amelia and Eleanor in the plane, getting ready to go to Baltimore. Wow, let's just look at this picture for a second. You can see those stars Amelia was describing earlier. How beautiful. What a great illustration. How amusing is it to see a girl in a white evening dress and high-heeled shoes flying a plane, said Eleanor. Amelia laughed as she made a wide sweep over Washington, D.C. and turned off all the lights in the plane. Out the window, the Potomac River glistened in the moonshine. The Capitol dome reflected a soft golden halo, and the enormous light-drenched monuments looked like tiny miniature statues. Soon the peaceful courtside gave way to shadowy woodlands. The Chesapeake Bay became a meandering outline in the horizon, and even though they knew it wasn't so, it seemed that the plane crawled slowly through a star-struck space. Eleanor marveled. It looks like we're sitting on top of the world. Oh, wow. Look at that beautiful illustration. You can see their view in the Capitol building glowing so bright. All the city lights that they described and the stars. This illustrator did an excellent job. I love how much detail they have and how you can just picture it even though they're in black and white. When it was time to land, Amelia carefully took the plane down. A group of reporters gathered, anxious to ask questions. Miss Roosevelt, did you feel safe knowing a girl was flying that ship? Just as safe, said Eleanor. Did you fly the plane, Mrs. Roosevelt? Asked one reporter. What part did you like best? Said another. I enjoyed it so much. And no, I didn't actually fly the plane. Not yet, but someday I intend to. I was thrilled by the city lights, the brilliance of the blinking pinpoints below. Amelia smiled. She knew just how Eleanor felt. There they are getting off the plane. Look at all those reporters. As the Secret Service agents drove them back slowly to the White House, Amelia and Eleanor agreed that there was nothing quite as exciting as flying. What could compare? Well, they admitted maybe the closest thing would be driving a fast car on a straightaway road with the still breeze blowing in your face. Arm's length, they walked up to the steps of the White House. Eleanor whispered something to Amelia and then hesitated, letting the rest of the group walk ahead of them. Are you coming inside, Mrs. Roosevelt? Someone asked. By then, they had wrapped their silk scarves around their necks and were hurrying towards Eleanor's car. So they just got back from flying, and already they're planning another adventure. I can see why they're friends if they both like adventure. Without changing her gloves. Where did we hear that before? Someone else didn't change their gloves before they went on an adventure. Interesting, interesting. I wonder why the author chose to do that comparison. Eleanor quickly slipped into the driver's seat and took her turn at the wheel. With the wind in their hair and the brisk air stinging their cheeks, they flew down the road. And after they had taken a ride about the city streets of Washington, D.C., they finally headed back to the White House. For dessert, Eleanor's pink clouds on angel food cake. And then you can see them enjoying some pound cake. Or angel food cake, excuse me. After their fun adventure. And then I love this book because it gives you the recipe for Eleanor's angel food cake. So if you want to make some at home, you can. And that is the end of Amelia and Eleanor Go for a Ride. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did.